Officer, Director and CEO of ACF Project Consultants Private Limited Pune, which is into cold chain and HVAC&R consulting since 1971, and the company has been promoting green cold chain at a global level. With a total work experience of more than 19 years in the industry, Harshal sir has handled 200 plus cold chain projects across the country. Harshal sir has been awarded with many prestigious awards like Briar Award in 2009 for Excellence in System Design and Emerson Cup for Refrigeration Design at Southeast Asia level in 2010. He was the recipient of Best Green Gold Chain Solution Award in 2017. He was also awarded Certificate of Honor by Global Gold Chain Alliance in 2017. More recently, he was the recipient of Ref Cold Immersion Award for Most Innovative Refrigeration Design for Food Processing Sector, given at an international event, Ref Cold India. He has been actively involved with NPH, that is National Horticulture Board, for various assignments, including preparation of standards, imparting trainings to engineers, as well as cold storage owners and operators all over India. He has been recognized as a resource person and trainer by the NHB. Harshal sir is the founder president of IIR Western Indian chapter. He has also given talks at various foreign international, including USA, Bangladesh, Nigeria, and many locations across India. He has been invited as an expert at Kigali Cooling Efficiency Program organized by United Nations Environment Program at Beijing, China. Harshal sir is also partnered with World Food Logistics Organization and Asian Development Bank as cold chain expert and works with them on cold chain and related projects globally. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of the coordinator. Now, I request Harshal sir to take over the session.
Okay, thank you, Aniket sir and Desai sir and all other professors who have been instrumental in having this session. Thank you for the introduction also. This particular session, when Professor Desai called me and asked me whether I would like to take this session, and he said it is for professors. So I was very excited by the fact that we will be talking to professors because it is the students are going to get directly benefited if their professors know this. And while professors obviously understand the theoretical portion very well, it is the practical portion that if they are able to tell the students, they will have a much better understanding of what lies ahead. So along with introduction to cold chain, I've also added a little bit about today's scenario in terms of what is the cold chain sector like and how it can be beneficial towards the end of the presentation. This session is going to be done through a combination of WebEx and YouTube Live, as far as I understand. So if there are times when it is felt that there are some communication breakages and all, kindly inform the organizers, and we can see how it can be managed best. Moving ahead with this presentation, the way we are going to go through this is we'll first see cold chain and its components. Then we will see a little bit of cold chain scenario in India, as I said some time back. And then what is the relevance of cold chain today? How a better cold chain could have very well helped India in the current situation, and how we can see it move ahead. I'm going to be talking a little slow because of this whole thing about moving from one platform to the other. Um, Cold chain per se is the chain in which the product moves when it is harvested from farm all the way to the consumer. It is in a safe, hygienic, and refrigeration assisted manner, in which typically and mostly it is the perishables that are taken, like food. Uh, this has never been new to India. For milk, it has been very well established. We all know that we get cold milk in packets in the morning at our homes. That eventually comes through a very well established cold chain. You would also know this fish, meat, poultry products, all of these which come in frozen state in many of the display cabinets. They also come through a process of cold chain. We will be talking a lot about these as we move ahead. And now, what is going to really come up in India is the fruits and vegetables cold chain. Majority of fruits and vegetables today are still being harvested, packed, and directly dispatched to different locations. They do not really go through a cold chain. What goes through cold chain is very limited portion of the produce, which is either getting exported or to some extent, like apples, it is coming through the cold chain. But most fruits and vegetables today do not have cold chain as part of the process. So this is something that is going to be a very big opportunity, so to say, for the upcoming generations, because considering today's situation where we have farmers who have created food, but there is nobody to come and pick it up, especially in areas which are far away from main cities. There are many news reports where you see that farmers have grown produce, but there's nobody to pick them up, and that's why that produce has to be sold by them at a much lesser rate. So these are very fundamental issues which are faced today by the farming community, and even in terms of the issues faced by the consumer, is that we are now in a position where we have to buy what is given by the person coming to our door. So today, maybe we are in a position where this lockdowns and all will slowly start easing in a month or two, but there is no guarantee that such an occurrence will not happen again. So we have to be prepared for all eventualities. Cold chain, if you see, is like this pipeline. You see, this is a fresh produce pipeline. I have to acknowledge Dr. Elhadi from Mexico, who has given me this slide for his kind gesture in allowing me to use the slide. If you see on the left side, is the person who is like the person who is the producer, and on the other side is the consumer, what he's getting. So what is the producer producing? If you see, is all very good quality stuff, but everywhere there are leakages in this pipe. In sorting, in packaging, in storage, there are leakages at every level, and these leakages are of various types. So all these leakages eventually in transport, in marketing, everywhere there is a leakage. There are contaminations, there's heat addition, there is cold, there is so much of issues that are happening with the product. And finally, what is coming to the consumer is very different than what has actually been produced by the producer. So this is the line which really needs to be mended, so to say. And now how we mend this line is what we will see in the coming slides, and at the end of this presentation, at least we would have a simple idea as to what all needs to be done. Obviously, we cannot really have a 1 hour session in which everybody starts knowing everything, but at least we understand what is the next steps that are needed. If you see cold chain, now when we say cold chain, we mean, as we have seen earlier, it is the safe and refrigeration assisted journey from harvesting to the fork, or if we say farm to fork, which is basically it is from the farm till the time you eat it on your fork. But somehow, when we look at it on a more practical term, the control that is there for most people is up to the retail outlet or up to the supermarket or the distribution center. That is where we can control everything. Once the product has gone into the hands of the consumer, it is up to the consumer to keep the product in the right cold chain. So you would see that there are these different colored lines which are shown. This is line A, line B, line C, line D, line E, and F. Now, these are all individual cold chain lines. Each of these lines can be considered as a separate cold chain. We will see each one of these lines separately as we move ahead. So the first line is basically that of a regular cold storage, which is like an onion cold storage or a potato cold storage, where basically you have some cleaning, grading, sorting. Then you have storage in the cold storage. And then once it comes out, it is dried and it is sent to the market. So typically that line A is that. Then line B is what is a pack house line, where you have fresh products coming in. And these fresh products will be graded, sorted, they will be packed, they will go through a process called pre-cooling. We will talk more about pre-cooling when we come to that. Then it goes to a short-term storage, and then we move via refrigerated transport. There could also be an added element of ripening in this line. Then we move to the line which is of the CA store, which is a controlled atmosphere store. Again, we will talk more about this in future slides. But just as a brief, I can tell you that controlled atmosphere storage is basically one that, along with temperature and humidity, we also take care of the oxygen and the carbon dioxide contents inside the chamber. Now, when we say contents, we are very significantly changing the percentages of these gases in the constitution of air. So, what is normally 21% oxygen is then brought to a range of 2.5 to 3%, or maybe even less than that. It could be even 1.5% oxygen. And something like carbon dioxide, which is in the range of 0.3%, would go all the way up to 2.5 to 3%. So we are significantly changing the constitution of air. And the reason for that, of course, we will see when we move ahead, but is mainly to enhance the product shelf life to a much longer life than is possible in a regular cold storage. Then we come to the next line, which is the frozen food line. When we say frozen food line, this is where we get all our ready to eats. We get your frozen peas, frozen corn, then meat, poultry, fish, everything which comes to your palate in a frozen form is here. But this is where it is actually been frozen at the pack house, or at the center where it is created. The next line is also a frozen line, but this is where you have pre-frozen products. Like you have ice creams, which are basically pre-frozen at the factory level, and they come out as a frozen product, and then they are directly put into a reefer container or van, and they are dispatched to a storage place like a hub, frozen food center or a cold storage. Don't need very low temperatures; they need higher. Now we will see individual components as to what these chains really translate into in terms of on-ground facilities. Should I wait? Aniket sir?
हॅलो हर्षल सर.
हा, काय झालं?
हा सर, मधात डिस्कनेक्ट झालं होतं.
ओके
आपण कंटिन्यू केलं तर चालेल, आलेलं आहे.
ओके, सो म्हणजे आहे तिथून कंटिन्यू करू का थोडा आधीपासून करायचं?
नाही, जिथून आहे तिथून कंटिन्यू केलं तरी चालेल.
बरं, ठीक.
हा,
मग आता शुड आय जस्ट कंटिन्यू नाउ का यू विल
Yes,
जस्ट?
yes. No, you can start.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Fine. So we will continue with the discussion as we were discussing bulk cold stores and multi-purpose cold stores. I'm not sure where the link really went, but just going to give a quick repeat of this, that bulk cold stores are the ones which have larger chambers, and these are typically in the range of 1000 metric tons each, or maybe more. There are sometimes people who go even beyond 2500 metric tons for one chamber. So and multi-purpose cold stores are ones which have smaller chambers and which are generally near the consuming areas. So bulk cold stores near the producing areas and multi-purpose cold stores near the consuming areas. That's how the logic works. And in multi-purpose cold stores, you can have fruits and vegetables and dry fruits and spices, pulses, everything that generally are stored. There are a lot of new products that have come in the recent 4-5 years, or maybe more than that, not necessarily 4-5 years, but turmeric and carrot and ginger, and there are so many others which people have taken up as an interesting idea. Even onion and garlic has been now successfully kept in cold storages. Only thing is that onion needs a very specific it needs to be processed and dried and everything, so it's not an easy thing to do. So while you can store onion in cold storages, it needs to have a very properly and carefully understood process. So that's something that should be known to everyone. So some photographs of cold storages. This is one of the earliest cold storages in Pune. In fact, I would say the first cold storage in Pune, which was back in 1971. This was from our own company, but that was a civil structure, kind of a. It was actually a multi-purpose cold storage, which is now possible. Of course, it all really depends on what is the actual requirement. Today, the requirement is for this kind of stores also and this kind of stores also. It is not necessary that you don't do these stores. Even today, there are people who are building stores which store in the conventional manner, because in a conventional storage, your capacity of storage is much higher than the mechanized loading. Then we move to round B, or the route B, which is with packhouses and pre-cooling. Now, what is pre-cooling? If you have to understand, pre-cooling is basically the process in which you are very quickly bringing a product from the ambient or from whatever temperature it is at to the point of the sweet spot, so to say. Every product has a particular temperature at which it is most comfortable. So if you take an example of pomegranate is very comfortable at 5 degrees and say 90% humidity of the air. If that is the case, then a pomegranate will stay much longer. Whereas if you see grapes, then the grape is more comfortable at 2 degrees and say 90 to 95% RH. Then if you see apple, then apple is most comfortable at 0 degrees I'd say 90 to 95%. So there are different products which require different uh, temperatures. Pre-cooling is the process in which we bring the product from whatever temperature it is at, say 25 degrees, 30 degrees, depending on the ambient. You bring it to the level it is at which it is most comfortable in a short time. You say something like 6 hours, 3 hours. A product like strawberry, for example, needs to be brought to its required condition in only 1 hour from its harvesting. So it is a product that then these facilities or these pack houses for strawberry needs to be very close to the growing centers. You have to practically be within like 5 kilometers, so that as soon as it is harvested, it is brought to this place and quickly brought down. So this is the kind of process. So grapes, pomegranates, we've just discussed all this. Number of units in Maharashtra, Karnataka, MP, UP, everywhere. So these are where the big growth potential lies. Pack houses with pre-cooling cold storage. This is something where there is tremendous potential in India. Now, the key problem that lies in these pack houses is the business model, because these are typically high on cost, high on initial cost, these facilities, and they will run mostly if it is created only for one particular product, then it will run only for that season. Like if it is a pack house which is created for grapes, it will run for that 2 or 3 months when grapes are readily available, and then rest of the time it is not operational. With grapes, it makes sense because grapes mostly have export market, such a large export market, uh, and very good prices are available. So even if you run the store only for 2 months, you make enough money to sustain for the whole year. So that is how a lot of these grape pack houses run well. But for other products, you may not get so much benefit, at least in current scenario. We are seeing over the next facilities coming up in pack houses, because there are different agencies like Asian Development Bank and World Bank, and even government of India, which is putting in a lot of money into this sector. So a lot of push is going to come up through government and other financial sources for helping people set up these facilities, helping them up with the fact that you have a high cost facility which you want to put up. So somebody will give you a grant, somebody might give you a subsidy, so that your initial cost portion, you are relieved of a certain amount of money that you want to put in, and then it becomes that much more viable. So this is something that this line is one of the big things that are going to come up in future. We will also see more in terms of numbers later on in the presentation. Typical layout of pack house. So what does a pack house really look like? I've just put this up particularly because uh, I have seen some very ridiculous pack houses come up. They just create one hall, and then somewhere randomly there will be a pre-cooling, and the other place there will be a cold room, but that's not how it works. You have to make sure that typically in a pack house, your product that comes in, for here it is the receiving dock here, and you have a grading hall where you have all this product which will be graded, sorted. Then it goes to the pre-cooling. From the pre-cooling, it will go into the cold storage, which is a short-term cold storage. It's not meant to be a long-term cold storage. And from there, through the dispatch door, it will go through the docks with the refrigerated containers. This unidirectional flow, if you see, the product has been moving in one direction. There has been no chance of cross-contamination between the incoming product and the processed product. That is a key requirement of this. It doesn't have to be U-shaped. It can be straight. It can be L-shaped. It can be whatever shape you want. But unidirectional flow is important for a pack house. That is a key takeaway from this. Some photographs of a pack house. You would see here on the left, they are loading the product. This line is basically one which is an automated line for grading, sorting, washing, waxing, everything happens in this. This one particularly is for mangoes, where the loading also happens in water, so that it doesn't damage the product. And then it is waxed, or not in case of mangoes, but there is a dryer once it comes out of the hot water treatment, and stuff like that. Lots of things that happen in this processing zone. It is typically different for different products. This photograph here is that of a pre-cooling. If you see, the products are loaded on both sides of a passage in between. Now, this passage is not really meant for walking. It's a passage meant for suction of air. So there are suction fans over here, which are pulling air into this zone. And you see this black portion here. This black portion is actually now going to come on top of this passage and cover it up fully. So that when air is sucked, it is going to go through the crevices of these crevices and the holes which are there in every box, and they go through that hole. It goes above the product, and because of that fast movement of air above the product, it will cool it down quickly. So that's typically what happens in a pre-cooling. This is the photograph of a facility which was created many years back. I would say about even 12 years back, and it's still running well. This is in Karnataka, which we had created. Then we come to the controlled atmosphere line. Controlled atmosphere, basically, as I said, is where we reduce the oxygen content of air and we increase the carbon dioxide content. By doing that, you put the product into a very deep sleep, or something like a hibernation. So it goes into that phase where it is consuming practically no energy. Its metabolic rate is very low. So till the time it is in the CA store, it is almost as good as it was when it went inside. So it extends the storage life of products by delaying the natural ripening process. Mostly this is used for products like apples, pears. Apples have been known to be stored, good quality apples you can store from anywhere between 6 to 9 months. If you see the apples stored in US and all, they store them for very long time. And after which they dispatch it, it comes to India, and then after it reaches India, it still has another 10-15 days to be sold. So it does help a lot in terms of keeping the product healthy. So CA store, these are some photographs of CA storage. This is one of the largest CA stores in India. It's about 12,000 metric tons. We were, of course, one of the parts of that project. We were the consultants there. And this is the passage of inside view of the passage, which has, you see, doors on both sides. These are large doors. If you see, there is a small hatch over here. This particular hatch, the significance of this is that because you have such a different air mixture inside the cold storage, or rather the CA chamber, a human cannot really enter a CA store, because with such low oxygen, the moment you go inside, you will faint. So that's why they have this hatch door, which is very near, which is very much at operating level. So what they do is, inside the chamber, just below the hatch door, they keep some trays or some boxes of product, so that you open the door, just check everything is okay, and you close the door again. Because once a CA door is closed, the chamber, once it is opened, then you have to dispatch all the product. You cannot keep it in the product. Rather, you cannot keep the product in the chamber for lifelong. So once a CA is broken and the oxygen has gone inside, the product has woken up. And once the product has woken up, then you cannot put it back to sleep again. So then you have to sell it. This is a pictorial representation of a CA store. It's very generic. basically it's just showing you what all is there. So you have insulation on all sides. You have a cooling unit. You have your nitrogen generator and your CO2 absorber. Both are nitrogen generator will push nitrogen into the chamber. CO2 absorber will basically make sure that you leave your CO2 levels within the range that is specified. Then you can have a breather bag, because when you do all this, you need to have extremely tight insulation all over. Once you have very tight insulation, you have to make sure that variations in air pressure inside the chamber are taken care of. And there you have this whole concept of breather bag. So there are a lot of controls also that come into picture. You have the whole CA system, which is controlled by a PLC or a SCADA, or something on PC, which will give you the entire scenario on the screen as to what is the temperature, what is humidity, what are the different concentrations. Then we move to the frozen food store. Frozen food stores are those, as I said earlier also, for green peas, corn, okra, mixed vegetables. Everything that goes into a frozen chamber are coming into this category, because this is meant to delay or keep the product fresh for a very long time. Frozen foods are also sometimes called as fresher than fresh, because once a product reaches this temperature of -18, it more or less goes into a zero metabolism state. So it stays at that state for as long as you store it. What do you mean by stays at that state? At the same time, you have to also understand that there is something called quick freezing and something called slow freezing. By quick freezing, we mean that the temperature of the product is brought to -18 in the shortest span of time, like we saw in pre-cooling, that you have to bring the temperature to the sweet spot in the shortest span of time. In here, in freezing, everything is at -18. So -18 is a defined point. So the core of the product needs to come to -18, which means your temperature of the chamber is typically kept at -20. Sometimes ice cream manufacturers ask for -25 as the temperature, but they are basically only trying to be safe, because when the product comes out and it is moving around, they don't want to have the ice cream go at -15, -16. They want to keep it within the zone of -18 or below -18. So many products are there. Mango puree is there, tomato, fruit pulp, fruit slices, dices, and fish, meat, poultry. All of these come under this frozen food line. This is also a big line, and India also has a lot of potential even in the frozen food line. This is the photograph of an abattoir and meat freezing plant, a fish processing plant. Fish are first cleaned and sorted, and then they are put into freezing, the quick freezers. There is pre-frozen foods, which are like ice creams, cheese. Sometimes, if it is coming from a large factory, you can say even fish and meat can come as pre-frozen. So here you basically have reefer vans operating throughout. From the moment it comes out, it has to go in a reefer van or a frozen van, and then it goes to the supermarkets. And there also it needs to be stored in localized small frozen chambers. Again, some photographs of butter and ice cream. And ventilated storage are again for products like like tobacco and chocolates, confectionaries. That is what really require this thing. Controlled ventilated stores are also being used for onions. So onions is a big topic, and what must be understood in onions is that onion can be stored in a standard ventilated storage also. What we call kandachar in Maharashtra is quite a well established practice for storage of onion. But the only problem in there is that there is a lot of weight loss to the extent of almost between 30 to 40% weight loss is achieved if it is stored for a long time. Now, if you go for a cold storage of onion, then you can go for a much lesser loss percentage, which could only be the amount of water it loses while drying. So that's the amount of weight loss which is ideally expected. So it could be in the range of just 10 to 15% as against 30 to 40%. So that is the level of product which you can gain, and product gained basically means you get more at the end of the storage period. Again, a photograph of a ventilated storage. This is obviously a palletized store. There is also something called irradiation, which as per the Ministry of Food Processing Guidelines can stand as an independent cold chain. So irradiation process, I think may be known to all of you, is you expose the product, any given product to a radioactive source, and that source, because of its radioactive waves, will kill a lot of the bacteria or whatever else is there inside the product, and it will make it safe for consumption. What is understood is that if onion goes through irradiation, it will not sprout once it has come out. Then we move to the concept of distribution centers. Distribution centers are basically something which will be one zone for everything that we saw till now. Then be it frozen stores, be it pack houses, be it multi-purpose stores, be it pre-cooling, and everything that we saw, if you try and put into one specific zone or one center, then that is a distribution center. It will also have dry storage. So there is one store which is at one distribution center at Kalamboli called Foodland. This Foodland center, again, we were part of this way back, I think in around 99 or 2000, that range. That is when the first distribution center actually came to India. Nowadays, you have many more which are in the pipeline because the real requirement of distribution center kind of working has come up now. So what all will it have? It will have a dry goods storage for non-perishable produce. It will have raw material receipt and storage. It will have processing, freezing and packing zone. It will have cleaning, drying, grading, packing, pre-cooling zone. It will have ripening chambers. It will have cold and frozen food storage. It will have delivery docks. It will have servicemen, utility blocks. Everything will be there. Basically, it's like a one-stop solution. If you see, here is a picture or a very basic representation of what can be a distribution center. There are some cases where people have challenges, especially in countries like India, where veg and non-veg foods are treated separately. So you could have a place where you need to have separate sections for these. And there we see that once we have created all this, all our losses that were happening in our pipeline have now been repaired. And now this repaired pipeline, because of a proper and well-established cold chain, is giving the right product to the consumer, and he's able to get whatever is being supplied by this guy. And he was, looking very sad in the earlier slide. Now he has become a happy guy. So this is the whole point of cold chain, that we want to make sure that we mend all these issues which are there in the food pipeline, and we repair this pipeline and give the consumer or make the consumer happy. Moving to cold chain scenario in India, these are some figures which are, of course, slightly old figures. These could be updated. But you are still number one in the world in terms of milk production. We are number two in the world in terms of fruits and vegetables production. Number 6 in terms of fish largest cattle population in the world we hold. Poultry is also one of the largest in the world, and ready to eat is growing. With all these numbers, we still have only about 9% of perishable production as the capacity to store, and the processing, which is only about 5 to 6%. So we are very low in terms of what we have actually created in terms of cold chain. What are the numbers which are needed? You see, this is a case created by NCCD report, taken from NCCD report. And this, if you see, it says that in September 2015, this was the condition. This frankly hasn't changed too much over the last 5 years. Pack houses, if you see, the requirement is about 70,000 pack houses. What is there is only about 250. Maybe in the last 5 years, you would have added another 150 to 200 pack houses, but you are still nowhere close to what is the required number of pack houses. 69,000 pack houses are what is required. Reefer vehicles, our requirement is about 61, 62,000. There were only 9,000 back then. Maybe now this has gone up to 15 to 18,000. But you are still way below what is the expected number. Cold storage here, it says that in terms of capacity, you still have a lot of capacity. But the problem here is that majority of this capacity is still dedicated to potatoes. I would say 85% of India, or maybe even 90% of Indian cold storages are all storing potatoes. Now, though potato requirement for storage is high, there's no doubt, but other products also need to be stored, and that is again an area where a lot of potential is seen. Ripening chambers, again, you see that there's a lot of gap in the requirement. Zone-wise distribution, if you see, north zone and east zone, they are the ones which are taking up major of cold storage. And again, north and east both have majority potato cold storages. Even though this is baseline 2012, this still hasn't changed very significantly even in the last 8 years. Percentage wise, we still have a lot of cold storages in the north and east. So what are the drivers of growth? The changing lifestyles. Small nucleus families are there. Today, if you see with situations like coronavirus, where people are staying home, getting food in the right quality at your place is something that is going to have more and more importance as we move ahead. National and international food chains are coming in. Food processing is considered a sunrise sector. Even the government has announced huge amount of money being pushed into this sector. 1 lakh crores is what is getting pushed into this sector by means of either subsidies or grants or even low cost loans. Everything is going to be done. Yesterday itself, I had a discussion with a consultant from World Bank, with whom we discussed on ways in which this 1 lakh crores can actually be utilized in the best possible way. Government is doing its bit, but even other financial institutions like World Bank and Asian Development Bank and IFC, these are all pitching in for India because they look at India as one of the food baskets of the world. India is one of the place that can actually be supplier of food to the entire world. We have so much production and we have so much potential, but we still need to get our act right in this whole cold chain sector. There is tremendous untapped market, and refrigerated transport is also one of the big things. Our company's little contribution to cold chain, of course, this is just very brief. We have, if anybody of you is a member of ISHRAE here, myself and Mr. Arvind Surange, we keep writing articles every time in the ISHRAE's journal, which has a cold chain supplement. So we have one article every time the journal is published. This is the Sustainable Refrigerated Facilities, ISHRAE's guide on sustainable refrigerated facility. This is the only guide of its sort in the world, which is talking of sustainable refrigeration, in which Mr. Arvind Surange, who is also our company's MD and director, uh, he was part of the team, and in fact, they also have multiple references of his work in this particular guide. And he has authored a book called The Cold Storage Basics. This book is something that is now translated to almost 5 to 6 languages in India. And it is also being translated to Turkish language, where all the documentation has been done, and the Turkish book is going to be coming out soon. What is its relevance in today's scenario? It is a major sector in the upcoming years and will provide good opportunity for employment in future. This is something that is important for all professors to understand and their students to know, that it's an area which is going to be very big in the coming years. Pack houses are going to be big in terms of fruits and vegetables. Just adding on to the earlier point, a lot of you would be having students who are coming from villages, and they have their own farms, but they're not interested in continuing with farming because there's too much of a problem and all. Please do tell all of them that cold chain is a sector where they can stick to their roots, they can continue farming and have these facilities put up in their zones. Government has a lot of subsidies, government has a lot of benefits for such cases, and we want really that the young people need to go back to farming and to their roots if we really want to get this India being as the food basket to the world. Reefer transport, low cost cool transports are also very important. Aggregators like food processing, FPOs is farmer producer organization, FO is farmer organization. They need to be there with transparent policies. Of course, I won't be discussing much on this. This is a completely different topic. And multiple agencies, as I said, are taking efforts with grants, with subsidies, like Ministry of Food Processing, APADIs, the Export Development Body, NHB, NHM, which is National Horticulture Board and National Horticulture Mission. And then financial institutions like Asian Development Bank and World Bank, they're all doing their bit to make sure that this industry grows in India. In conclusion, we would like to say that refrigeration and cold chain are indispensable parts of today's civilization. Growth is essential, but challenges on the energy and environment front are big. Why are there challenges on the environment front? Because a lot of refrigerants being used today are still HCFCs and HFCs, which, as you all know, have their own problems with ozone depletion potential and global warming potential. Energy is also a big issue because, having a system designed in a proper way can ensure that your energy consumed can be reduced by half. What is designed improper and what is designed proper can have a difference of close to half energy consumption, which means if your bill per month would have otherwise been 4 lakh rupees, you now can move at a bill of 2 lakh rupees. Of course, these are only figures that I'm throwing. They may or may not be the exact figure, but that is the level at which you can actually have difference in a good designed facility and a badly designed facility. Or rather, I wouldn't say a badly designed facility, I would say a not so well designed facility. Sustainable and green refrigeration and allied technologies need to be promoted. And cold chain is great industry to get into, especially considering the kind of returns and benefits available. So this is something that needs to go well to the students. It's a great area to get into. It's one of the sunrise sectors in India. Looking at how we are moving ahead, this is of course part of food chain. Food industry never dies, and it's something that people can get into. Thank you very much. And if there is anything that any questions or anything that need to come up, please let us have those.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We have some questions. Harshal, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah. So the question is from Anand Singh Pawar. What are the challenges in cold chain in India?
What are the challenges in cold chain in India?
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a very generic question, but to put it in a short way, cold chain basically one of the key challenges is that it is a high initial cost infrastructure which needs to be created. So initially you are needing to put in a lot of money, and then after 3-4 years you really start getting your returns. So one of the big challenge is that. So the government is trying to offset that challenge by giving subsidies and by giving grants. The other big challenge is the power consumption. Because these are high cost and high electricity consuming requirements, making sure that the design is right is a very big challenge. Unfortunately, today majority of the industry is running the show as if I would compare it to farmers who are being told by suppliers of fertilizers um, and pesticides that this is the best for your crop, so you just go ahead and do it. There needs to be a very specific concern on having an energy efficient system, and that is another big challenge. If you see, other challenges are fundamental infrastructure which is there. While road quality has been improving over the last many years, we still have a long way to go. There are many places which do not have proper electricity. That is another issue which needs to be taken care of. And another big concern is access to markets. So farmer having direct access to markets is a big concern point, and it's a big challenge. So these are some broad challenges that I can see. However, before we move to the next question, however, it still does not mean that the industry does not see a bright future. In spite of all these challenges, I'm seeing a very good future for the industry, and it's a good direction to get in. Yeah, next question.
Yeah, so next question is from Mr. Jignesh. The question is, what will be the temperature range in controlled atmosphere store?
Temperature range for controlled atmosphere store, is that the question?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So controlled atmosphere store by itself does not have a temperature range specified. It is finally what you design, and what you design is based on what product you want to store in that chamber. So you cannot have a controlled atmosphere store which says that because it is a controlled atmosphere store, this is the temperature range that it has. That's not the condition. The product for which you are creating this CA store has to be defined, and based on that product, the temperature and the humidity and the oxygen and the CO2, everything comes out as a result of what product you intend to store there. CA store is another case like your bulk stores, though it is not a bulk store per se, where it needs to be closer to the growing areas. Closer it is to the growing areas, the better it is, because you want that product to come in from harvesting into the store in a time span of between 24 to 48 hours, ideally. The faster, the better. So that is where a CA store comes in. If it is say an apple based CA store, then depending on the variety of the apple, you could have a temperature of say 0 degrees or to -1 degrees with 90 to 95% RH. But that is still because it is created for apple. If it is created for something else, then the temperature range would be different. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I think on behalf of coordinators, I would like to conclude this session. Before concluding, I would like to thank you, sir, for giving us your valuable time and for such an insightful session. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Should we close now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.